The Batteries Included podcast is brought to you with United Chargers. United Chargers presents the Grizzly range of EV chargers. There's the original Grizzly Classic, a powerful, heavy-duty, portable EV charging station built to withstand the toughest conditions. The Grizzly Duo, a dual-port unit designed to charge two vehicles at the same time. The Grizzly Mini, a small, portable charging station built with an indoor-outdoor rated cast aluminium enclosure. And the Grizzly Smart, a revolutionary smart EV charger. All Grizzly chargers come with a convenient 24-foot cable and the ability to adjust the current from 16 amps all the way up to 40 amps. That's 9.6 kilowatts. Plus, they're IP67 rated. Built in Canada with the highest quality materials. Order yours now at unitedchargers.com. That's unitedchargers.com.
Hello, and welcome to the Batteries Included podcast. It's October the 13th, 2023, and this is episode number 6. Thank you very much for joining us. On today's show, we'll be talking about the Kia EV3 and EV4 just revealed at Kia EV Day, along with the EV5, the debut of BMW iX2, the premiere of the Mercedes-Benz Trucks eActros 600 with LFP batteries, and of course, much, much more. I'm Domenick, host of the YouTube channel Drive Electric with Domenick. Joining us today is the rakish Mr. Tom Malogny, senior editor at Inside EVs and host of the YouTube channel State of Charge. We also have the magnetic Mr. Martin Lee from the EV News Daily podcast, which is available on all the best podcast platforms. And of course, Kyle Connor joins us from the majestic, practically palatial halls of Out-of-Spec Studios, where he produces high-voltage videos for a number of YouTube channels. So, hey there, everybody. Good to see you all.
Going, guys? Right. Wait, before we keep going, and you called me rakish?
Rakish, oh yeah.
Did you look up the definition of that?
Well, yeah.
Martin, could you pull up a definition of rakish? I'm not sure it's exactly what Dom believes it is.
Oh,
right, let me see. A rakish man, especially a rich man, lives in an immoral way, especially having sex with a lot of women.
Whoa!
Okay, what are you trying to start trouble with me and Meredith?
Holy what?
Apparently, I do not know what rakish means. Not at all. But I've had in my head for like many years, like more than 40 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like slim, stylish,
We need to fact check Dom's adjectives, guys, moving forward.
I generally do this. Oh, okay. I take that back. You are not that. Oh my God.
Okay, we can move on, I guess.
Okay.
What a for a loop there.
Martin, I guess your studio attacked you just before we went live on the air. That's why we were a little bit late coming on because
yeah, sorry about
as you can see that you have got a bright light. And you're in England. You have bright lights in England? I didn't even know.
I have this big window in the side of my office that I normally have covered in sound panels, and one of them made a bid for freedom 30 seconds before we went live, and hit me on the head. And now I'll just leave it like that. So we do have daylight in England. It doesn't happen very often.
It's not raining today, apparently.
No, no, it has. It's rained all morning. I got drenched this morning on my bike.
Oh, really? Yep. Okay, so let's kick it over to you, Martin, actually, for the EV News Daily Weekly Reporting Roundup. Take it away.
Let's start with news of the Tesla Cybertruck going under the hammer at the Peterson Museum, fetching $400,000. The trouble is they're not actually making the Cybertruck yet for people to drive away, so really you were bidding on a build slot, but either way, these charity auctions have a way of making lots of money on new vehicles. Seen it many times before. Volkswagen is gearing up to unveil an electric version of their legendary Transporter van, part of their deal with Ford, marking a departure. This Transporter won't borrow its roots from the California, instead founded on a fresh platform conceived with Ford that underpins the e-Transit as well, but it'll be VW's take on the Transporter. The United Auto Workers Union halted a walkout at GM's Arlington, Texas facility following GM's agreement to a key request to include battery workers in any future EV plant in the nationwide union agreement. Lucid Air Sapphire EVs are now getting customer deliveries as of last weekend. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4 horsepower, like that, and does 0 to 60 miles an hour in 1.89 seconds, outgunning the Model S Plaid. The US Army has initiated a new program to get prototypes on the road for their EV reconnaissance vehicle. To prepare for that, they've procured some to evaluate a Hummer EV, a platform from Canoe, and a Lordstown. maybe go back and buy some different ones. Army. The French are opening up their EV subsidies for next year. The specifications are now out and automakers can go online to sign up for that. The new subsidy criteria, however, will probably sideline several Chinese models. The MG does well in Europe. Tesla make, of course, a lot of cars in China, and those cars will probably be really harshly affected by the new rules to get a subsidy in France. Tesla's Model Y is nearing the best-selling EV status. A Clean Technica report points out that they think Model Y is now at 2.16 million, behind Model 3, 2.2 million sales overall. That's not bad, actually. In just a couple of years, 3 years, Model Y has been around. It'll probably, the tipping point, as it were, will happen sometime this quarter, and Model Y will be officially best ever best-selling electric vehicle. Ford are offering more incentives on their F-150 Lightning. Different specs get different discounts, but for top specs, another $7,500 on top of the federal tax credit. That's 15 grand off an F-150. Volkswagen unveiling the new ID4, ID5 with a bigger battery and also a better motor on that as well. Bigger screen inside, new software, new menus. The ID4 Pro and ID5 Pro get that 210 kilowatt electric motor. Also, Skoda doing the same with the Enyaq and dropping the IV bit of the name, I think. So the Enyaq 80 is now called the Enyaq 85. The all-wheel drive goes from the 80X to the 85X. Otherwise, the upgrades in terms of the faster charging speed, 175 kilowatt peak charge rate on the big battery for the Enyaq, mirrors what they're doing with the Volkswagen ID4, ID5 back at the parent company. China's new energy vehicle sales hit a big record in September, surpassing their previous high. Looks like we're on target for 10 million EVs in China this year. That's crazy, right? That includes plug-in hybrids as well, though. That's not bad. Most of those, though, of that 10 million will be pure BEVs. Tesla is marking a notable achievement. 20 million of their own cells made. The 4680 cells, the 20 millionth we think was made at Giga, Texas. They only made the 10 millionth in June earlier this year. That ramp is happening really quickly. It needs to if they're going to scale Cybertruck. Cadillac is coming back to Europe with digital sales. Go back a few years and there was loads of Cadillac dealers around, but they didn't sell any cars. Now, GM could push perhaps the Lyric. It's going to start in Switzerland and then go to 5 more European countries, which they haven't confirmed yet, but they'll all be digital online sales for the Caddy brand to come back here, which we don't have. Renault's EV unit, Ampere, will be split off and part of an IPO. It'll become its own entity on November the 1st. The CEO, Luca De Meo, wants it to be worth 10 billion euros. The BMW iX2 powertrain is derived from the iX1, so 64.8 kilowatt hour battery, 313 horsepower of those 2 motors, one on each axle. We'll talk more about the iX2, hopefully on the podcast today. Stellantis unveiling plans to establish a second EV battery plant next to their first one in Kokomo, Indiana. Both the establishments collaborating with South Koreans Samsung SDI. Kia revealed 3 new EVs, well, maybe 4 actually. The small to medium SUV range crossover. I'm never sure what to call these small cars that try and make themselves look bigger than they are. There's the 3, the 4 and the 5. The 3 and the 5 are SUV shapes, compact, and the 4 is a sedan saloon, all part of Kia's move to hit 1 million EVs a year by 2026. EV5 will launch in South Korea and China, and they say other global markets, but they won't say where it is. The Chinese cars, LFP batteries, South Korean cars, NCM batteries. The EV2 was mentioned by the CEO as a compact, cheap European city car as key to their future. And finally, Tesla's V4 superchargers rolling out. We've seen them in Oregon, Nevada, Alabama. The last week's been fantastic. Various states are now getting the V4s. And I did check the Tesla Motors Club forums. And yes, somebody uploaded a picture to the TMC forums to show that these have the small screens, the card readers as well, like the ones we have in the UK. So the European ones, I don't think they all have them. You still use the app. We have a law here that you haven't got to be part of a club or sign up to charge your car like you wouldn't if you were filling petrol or diesel. And so it looks like the US ones are the same as we have on the V4s. So rock on up, tap your card, your watch, your phone, and you can pay for your fuel and go without being part of a club or an app and all that kind of stuff. Not that the Tesla app is particularly onerous to use, but that's great to see. And that is your update. Let us know what you thought about all the stories we talked about in the comments below. Many we'll discuss on the podcast today. And of course, leave a raving review for our new musical signature.
I love it,
Holy
Martin.
smokes.
Look, so this is like a surprise to all of us. Like Martin
Thank you.
did that little jingle thing, as far as I know, because that was the first time I heard it, and it was like, oh yeah, right, and it was awesome. Great.
Well, if you remember last week, I told him he needed a jingle.
That's right.
As an intro, so he took me seriously. Good on Martin. Good work.
Absolutely. And I'll make that available maybe as a standalone YouTube video for people who want to have that on repeat. I mean, I can play it again if you like. Bam!
Wow.
That might be a good ringtone for my phone.
I mean, I like to both in my old radio career. I did go to Abbey Road a few times to record sessions. I've been around the world's top producers. I know quality when I hear it. I think you'll agree. It's the greatest jingle in the history of mankind ever.
That's pretty. Actually, did you write that?
It's fantastic.
I don't know. I mean,
can I get PRS on that? Can I get some royalty payments?
all right.
Absolutely. It's the best.
Daniel
was great.
says you're getting big time. We'll never be big time, Daniel. I mean, we never will. But hey, I'm glad you like it.
All right. So that was great. I love the stories, and we'll dig into more of those in a bit. But
Tom's getting right to business.
Yeah, well, we're 10 minutes in. We haven't even talked about anything.
Yeah, well, let's talk about something, Kyle. I understand that you got an exciting new toy. It doesn't have any wheels, but it puts out like 322 horsepower worth of power, or 240 kilowatts. So what's going on?
Yes. Yeah. Were you not here when it got here? You had already left by then. So Domenick, I think almost more interestingly, Domenick just drove his Tesla across the country and back. So I really want to talk about your experience with your car and using the supercharger network and what you saw and what you did and what videos are to come, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I got a DC fast charger. Autel sent it. It's, I think, the first ever review high power DC charger to have ever existed. It's, like we get review cars. They sent us a review charger. The only problem is I don't know how the heck they're going to come pick this thing up when I'm done with it. I don't think they want to pick it up. So it might just be ours. But that's not like a sponsored thing. I mean, yeah, they gave us a charger, which is cool. But if it breaks, I'm the first one to show you there. And we're going to go through the whole process of how basically we have to fix it. It'll be pretty cool diving into new territory for us. And 240 kilowatt charger is no joke. This thing's going to pull a lot of power, and thankfully we're putting it where we have a lot of power, but we also need to be really mindful about when we pull that much power, because holy smokes, we could have like a $40,000 charging session if we get it wrong. So we need to make sure everything's okay here. And I mean, it's not going to be cheap to install it. And that's going to be a whole process. We're going to show, essentially, I want to show everything that goes into DC fast charging testing, and also installation and running and back-end management and utility grid interaction. And basically, this is the unit we're going to do it with. And since we posted this video a couple days ago, we already have other charging companies who are like, we'll send you our units. So we might, I don't know, but it's
you should start
you should start
a new network. Let's try Colorado.
Yeah, no, not our business. But I just kind of wanted to play around with the units. We of course need a DC charger to charge up all the cars we have. This will be the fastest charger in our city, which is a pretty large city here in northern Colorado. And so, yeah, very much excited to get it wired up and to play around with it and go through the commissioning process and the setup and all the interoperability, of course. So it should be pretty freaking cool.
You know what would be interesting, actually, if the city gave you a lot, like loaned you a lot to put all these different chargers on. You could have this like really kind of weird charging station for Fort Collins, like publicly accessible eventually. With
we wouldn't
weirdness units.
So we have that idea. It's already in progress, but that's a completely separate project. City of Fort Collins wasn't so interested in working with us, but we want to do it anyway. Right. So yeah, we're working on something like that, but we got to start small before we go bigger. I want to understand DC charging. I want to use it. I want to pay the electric bill and understand how much we screwed ourselves, by plugging a Hummer EV on 3:00 on a Wednesday, and how much electricity we need to sell at less expensive rates to make up for that peak charge. So these are all the things I want to learn and to start understanding. So super excited about it. The video did okay, considering it was a charger that wasn't even plugged in. We just unboxed a box basically, and people seem to be interested. I'm obviously was shaking with excitement. So this is just next level epic.
So that's awesome. Kyle, when you're talking about the pricing, how like, obviously it's going to be separate metered, but I know you're in the facility that you're in has a lot of power coming in, and it depends on how that's how the power's distributed, how they'll dice up the demand charges. Are you going to be on your own, like your own account with its own demand charges and all that, or will you be like, parse? Because I know sometimes big facilities like this have blocks of their facility that share like a common account, and that helps them with their demand charges. How's that going to work for you? Do you know yet?
Actually, yeah, we don't know yet. So what I want is my own meter. That was the whole idea. And so we are going to sub meter within the building for sure, but we probably can't bill on that sub meter. So what we're going to have to do is everything in the building is completely monitored and tracked. And so we're just going to take note of our load and demand profile, and then everyone will divvy up everything. It's going to be pretty complicated. We have to have a lot of meetings with the building and to figure out how we're going to do this. Also, we've reached out to the utility in the city to be like, hey, can you help us figure this out? Because again, this is a world that I'm not so familiar with, but we want to learn everything. And yeah, to your point, Tom, I think, how do we fairly compensate for our influence on the demand charge peak is going to be interesting. Now, I'm also not so concerned about trying to have our own meter for review purposes because every city has a different demand charge structure. But I do just want to run, make sure we're paying our fair share to the school, that they're not having a burden for us installing the charger there, basically.
Well, I mean, I think the easiest way to do it was for every month you pay the school, the demand charge is equal to 240 kilowatts. Because that's what you're going to be boosting their demand charge every month, because you're going to hit that peak every month. Even if the first time you plug it in with a 800 volt architecture vehicle, you're going to hit that. So whatever it is, let's say it's, $5 a kilowatt hour demand charge, like every month, just cut them a check for $1,000, and that's the easiest way to do it. In my opinion, I could be wrong, but you're going to, when there's multiple chargers, it's more difficult as you get more, because now you can't just multiply it times 5 chargers times 240, because you might not have them all pulling 240 at once. You never will. Or rarely. So with one, it's easy because it's going to pull the maximum. But once you get that second one, now this month, did you have one running at full and the other one running at half, or did it 3/4, or did you never use 2 at once? That's what you're going to have to figure out.
Well, we'll always pull full power out of this thing. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I mean, we have enough 800 volt cars.
At a 1, but it's difficult once you start. You said you might get another one and another one. That's when it's going to get very difficult for you to know at any given point what was the most you pulled. Because you just have to pull it for a second and you get hit with the demand charge.
Everything will be completely tracked. So we will make sure that, they have, I mean, it's a nerd facility for nerds like us. So they track and store their energy usage every 1 second, and it's stored, forever basically. But yeah, so basically the way Fort Collins works is, depending on winter or summer, we have a different demand charge rate. And demand charge, for the viewers who don't know, I know you know this, Tom, is billed by the load on the grid by kilowatt. So our kilowatt hour rate, like what we would pay at home, is only 4 cents per kilowatt hour, roughly. It's dirt cheap. I mean, we can just charge everything for free. But what the load is what matters in a commercial facility. And so they charge $15 per kilowatt in our city. So it's going to be a $3,600 a month, roughly. If I charge a Hummer EV for 1 second, that's a $3,600 charging session. And then everything after that, it just gets cheaper because I've already hit the peak. And now we're just, paying that 4 cents per kilowatt hour as we go forwards.
Yeah, and to add, somebody just brought up about the point of having battery buffers, and that's why some sites do this with battery buffers. For the people that don't understand, let's say Kyle puts in 4 of these, and potentially he could pay 4 times that 3,700 every month. If at any given time all 4 chargers are delivering their power, the maximum power for 1 second, boom, he gets hit with a $13,000 bill for that 1 month, which you'll never recover selling electricity to people. And that's what makes high-speed EV charging so difficult as a business case. So why do people put in these big battery buffers? So what they'll do is they'll put in a big battery pack, and they'll set the limit that the 4 chargers can deliver at any one time. Let's say combined, the most that they'll let it deliver is 300 kilowatt. And the battery will be on those rare times when all the chargers are delivering more than that. They'll be pulling some of the power from the battery, and they'll limit the grid pull to 300 kilowatt, so they could never pay more than that for a demand charge. And that's why we talk about having battery buffers as energy storage on site. It's not necessarily that the utility can't deliver that much power. It's to offset these onerous demand charges that make it nearly impossible to ever make money selling electricity. I used to have a little 24 kilowatt DC fast charger at my restaurant, tiny little thing, right? Sometimes my demand charges for that one stupid unit was like $1,000 a month. And I was pulling in like $150 a month selling electricity. And then I had to pay $1,000 demand charge. So it makes it impossible to ever profit, and I get frustrated sometimes when people are so critical of DC fast charge operators, and we need to be, because they need to get better reliability and everything. But it's not like they're making hand and money over fist here and just taking advantage of you and not fixing the stuff. I mean, it's got to work. Don't get me wrong, but they're not running to the bank and buying corporate jets off the profits and screwing us by not fixing them. They're losing money.
Yeah, until they do automaker partnerships, and that's where they make their money.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, yeah, you're totally right. So that's basically why we got this unit. We want to know the numbers, at least where it's, we can't calculate the numbers everywhere in the country. All we can say is, hey, we're going to put this unit here. Here's how much it's going to cost us to install it. Here's the permitting process. Here's the installation process. It's going to be way faster and way more simple than installing a DC charger in the back of a parking lot, because we already have power where we're putting the charger. That's like 90% of the battle of most charging network operators, is getting the power to the place you need it. And that's why we chose to put the charger here at the powerhouse, Colorado State University powerhouse, which houses the Energy Institute, which is where we're moving back into. We had our office here for a long time. Then we left because we thought we were getting another building. Now we're going back because we couldn't put a garage door in the old building. So now we're back here, and they have high power. So it's like a perfect solution. And everything about this building is focused on high power, hydrogen, electric, diesel, natural gas. It's all focused on commercial scale energy applications and large trucks. So it's perfect environment for it. And we are going to film everything. There's not going to be one thing that happens with this charger that's not part of the series. And I'm so thankful that we have the opportunity to do this. Those chargers aren't cheap. They're, I don't know how, like I said in the video, I don't know how much this charger is, but 150 grand wouldn't surprise me, something like that. So for them just to drop it off and say, hold on to it, make some videos, and we'll take it back eventually, is awesome. It's still going to cost us a ton of money to do this, because It's going to be ridiculously expensive to run the unit, ridiculously expensive to put the unit in. But now the cost of entry is significantly less. And it should be really cool to monitor all of this. But for sure, I'm peaking this thing at 240 kilowatts. I'm not going to let that get in the way. I want full power all the time, baby.
Who can use it?
We don't actually know at the moment. So there's going to be an initial temporary install just behind me in this video for our viewers. Eventually, we're going to move this unit, and maybe if other companies decide to send us units as well, like they said they were going to, we're going to put them all in the front parking lot, basically right in the city, right in downtown Fort Collins, and charge money for electricity. I want to do like a simulated business case. There's no way I will ever make money. I don't want to make money from this, especially from a charger someone gave to us for a review. But I think it would be cool to charge, 30 cents a kilowatt hour, something reasonable to try and offset some of the costs and to show that to our viewers to say like, okay, here's what it would have cost if we charged 50 cents per kilowatt hour or 10 cents per kilowatt hour, and play around with a whole bunch of pricing things. But that's going to be 6 months, a year and a half into the future before we can make it public. For at least the meantime, it's going to be just for us to use, some friends when they come and visit and whatnot. Because where we're actually putting it is, it's not really my choice. It's just there's no public parking available where this is. So it's not something I can just say to the viewers, hey, go and plug in and try it out, because I'm working on it with the school. I'm trying to get it approved for a public access so we can sell it back there. But it's also not like where you want to sit and charge in the back of a building. Like there's nothing to do. I mean, you could come visit us, but like there's restaurants are in the area, but it's a 5-minute walk to the closest restaurant. It's not the perfect location for a charging hub.
Yeah, and would the school use it to learn from and to teach their students about the process and things like that as well?
They haven't explicitly shared interest on that topic, but I know a lot of the students. I know most of the professors as well, and so it's a topic that will come up. Ultimately, no, they haven't shared their interest in that yet. But if they want to, we can.
That's fascinating. There was a report this week, I think, coming out of Cox Automotive that, or maybe it was an Edmunds report that said, projecting to 2030, the US is going to be short of 140,000 engineers certified on DC high voltage, and all of the things that go around with the high voltage AC as well, and car charging. So if anyone's going to look to make a career change, and obviously people retire from that profession and then apprentices come in, but even then the US will be 140,000 engineers short of what's needed. When you look at it, was looking at the amount of solar installations, home battery, DC fast charging for EVs, and it's like, this is a really big problem on the horizon that we never talk about. A great career choice for anyone who's got kids that don't know what to do with their life. Just
electrical engineer.
Go and learn how to fix these high voltage architectures, and you'll never be short of work.
Well, and maybe I can float an idea by the audience at least. One of the ideas we have is this charger, this whole installation is a precursor to what I eventually want to build here in town, which is going to be a multi-charger park, like Domenick had mentioned. But I don't necessarily want it just to charge EVs. I want it for multiple reasons. A, we have no charging in our city, and we have no real charging on the horizon coming other than an announced Tesla supercharging station coming to Fort Collins. Very excited about that. And it should be, I think, a V4 with Magic Dock, but nice. We'll talk about that later on. The other things I want to do is I want to use it for interoperability testing. So I want multiple units there, so manufacturers who do high altitude testing in our area can bring their vehicles by and test on a bunch of chargers, save them some time. We could get some prototype spotting videos in. I'm sure they would hate that. Be awesome. Hilarious. And the other thing would be to train high voltage different topics to local community college, Colorado State University, et cetera. And there's actually some educational grants that we could go for this charging site if we were to pursue this and make it happen. But essentially, I would want to showcase, okay, here's like the 5 different ways to back up the site. Here's the 5 different ways we could wire it. So each charger would like be its own bespoke setup in terms of above ground, underground, pentagraph charging. I don't know. We could go crazy. But I think we're starting small. Well, let us get comfortable with one unit. Let's soak this in over the next 6 months or 1 year, really understand how this works before we make any big decisions like that.
Awesome. I love it. I guess I'm going to have to come back and get charged up.
Your car will not charge on this unless you get the CCS retrofit.
Right. I need to get that CCS retrofit. That's on my list of things to get.
Yes, and you could do it yourself. Do a DIY.
Oh yeah,
pretty simple. Yeah. And I haven't done it to my 3 yet. I need to, obviously, with this charger now. But we're going to eventually have it's dual CCS at the moment. They're 300 amp REMA cables, air cooled, that can boost to 400, and they're like you can pretty much just run it flat out. So I want to look at that derating profile and understand how that works. Eventually, I'd like to get a charger that can give us everything for charge testing. This isn't going to be a great charger for the high power charge testing stuff, just because it can't output 500, 600, 700 amps that many EVs need these days. However, we are going to put a NACS cable on it as soon as possible. So it's going to be one CCS, one NACS, and that'll be a whole video on how to swap a cable and how much does it cost to buy the cable and
Wow,
how much
a
does
lot.
it cost to install it. So yeah, cables are way more expensive than people think. So
Yeah, they are no joke.
I just want to hopefully, I want to understand DC charging more because we're extremely critical of it. So I'm like, hey, we can't just be critical all the time and not feel the pain ourselves. So I want to, on a very small scale, start to understand what charge point operators are going through this one unit and hopefully more in the future. And then B, share those costs of running and costs of service and costs of upgrades with our audience. And then as a byproduct, we can charge our cars for our range tests and some for charging tests and have a cool unit to play around with in the meantime. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be cool to have, your own like self-assigned. You could like in your park have like the 500 kilowatt charger sitting there for like the testing. You reserved pylons in front of it.
Yeah. I mean, we could do anything, and I don't know. We all the customization and setup options are funny too. Of like how we can put it when we permanently install it, and then even down to like what screensaver should we pick have been some of the conversations as the background on the screen. So yeah, you got a lot to look at.
That's true. It's funny that Fort Collins doesn't have a whole lot of public charging, considering there are a lot of electric vehicles in Fort Collins. But I guess a lot of people living there, there's not a whole lot in the way of like apartment buildings and condos. There's a lot of single family homes, basically.
And most apartment buildings have charging here. There's a lot of apartments. You don't really notice them. They're like kind of hidden behind trees and stuff. And we're starting to see downtown get built up, but we do need inner city charging. It's a real lack of it, especially when people come here to visit. We're a pretty big tourist city. And so people get up here. We're like, I'm in the third largest city in Colorado. I'll just charge up when I'm there. Meanwhile, they're sitting at a 50 kilowatt EV Go station that has 5 Leafs in front of it parked waiting to charge. It's just not a good situation.
5 Leafs. All right. Hey, we should move along a little bit. Tom, this week I understand that you got to spend some time with your friend and longtime podcast viewer, Mr. Pete Bremey, and talk about his 2019 Tesla Model 3 after 4 years and 100,000 miles. So I hope people will take the time to watch this video. But are there any standout things, like with the positive and negatives, that you want to highlight?
So yeah, first of all, Pete's in the comment stream today. He's a longtime follower of our podcast here. He actually a longtime listener of Martin's EV News Daily show and Kyle. So he's been following all of us for a while.
Sorry to hear that, Pete. I mean, someone's got to.
Yeah, he actually mentioned something that it's been hard for him to recently find your the EV News Daily. Maybe it hasn't been notifying him recently. He asked Martin about that. How come I don't get the notifications anymore? So, but
I got that fixed. Sorry, Pete.
Sorry. Yeah, in any event. So yeah, Pete has a 2019 dual motor long range Model 3 and just turned 100,000 miles. So drives a lot, drives 25,000 miles a year, which is much more than the average American, so I thought after 100,000 miles, it'd be a good time to pull him on state of charge and just ask him some questions about it. Like, how much did it cost you to charge? And Pete keeps records on everything. So he knows exactly what it cost him to charge between at home and DC fast charging. And basically his overall opinions. Pete's an old rock and roll guy. He plays for he's actually the bassist for the 60s rock band Vanilla Fudge, and they still tour. They're still out there touring around the Fudge. And he's an old muscle car guy and loves cars. This was his first electric car. So I said, it'd be cool to interview him and see, after driving at 100,000 miles, what do you think about this electric stuff? Have you had a good experience with it? What about charging? How about how much does it cost you in maintenance? He has all his maintenance records. I listed everything. And as you would expect, Pete absolutely is totally converted. Won't ever buy a gas car again. It cost him $3,700, $3,600 to $3,700 to charge for 100,000 miles. His total refueling, $3,700. His maintenance was right around the same, I think $3,600 total maintenance. And that was for 2 sets of tires, a wheel alignment. He put in a new 12-volt battery, and then wiper blades and washer fluid. And he did have to replace his windshield, which broke on one of his, he drove it to Florida and he got a crack, which, kind of that could happen to any car. But it was an expense, so we added it. And look at that, 100,000 miles total cost to maintenance is 3,700. Add the fuel in, 3,700. You're talking a little over $7,000 for 100,000 miles, all in maintenance and fuel. That's crazy, and on top of it, it's a fantastic vehicle. So, Pete pretty much said he loved everything about it. He found a few niggles that he didn't like. He's not really thrilled with the nav system. He wishes it had a grab bar, which I always said when I had mine, because my dad always had trouble getting into it. When you lean in, there was nothing to grab on and hold yourself up. And, he talked about phantom braking a little bit and things like that. But overall, totally thrilled with it. Won't go back to gas.
Would he buy another one? As in, is he going to keep this and run it and run it and run it? Or is he going to trade or what?
I think he's going to keep it. That's the plan, because we talked about doing a 200,000 mile wrap up. And here's the thing: his battery. One of the reasons why I also wanted to talk about this. So many people worry about, I don't want to get an EV because I'm going to have to replace a battery in like 4 or 5 years. So this is 4 years in, 100,000 miles. His battery's still at like 93% of its original capacity.
Wow.
He has Tesla Fly and Recurrent, and plus, as a follow-up to this, I did a 70-mile-an-hour highway range test with it. That video is not published yet. It's coming up tomorrow on my channel. So I took it right after we did this interview, charged it to 100%, hopped down on the turnpike, same course that I do all my cars. Now, I did a 70-mile-an-hour range test with my 2019. I also had a 2019 dual-motor long range, like Pete's, but mine had the 18-inch wheels. He has the 19-inch wheels. And I range tested mine after I owned it for a year. And I think it had like 16 or 17,000 miles on it. It went 289 miles. But then when I got my 2021, if you remember, I got a 2021 with the refresh. I did it as soon as I got it. And that went 310 miles. God, yeah, 310. So, but Pete has the 19-inch wheels, which are going to shave a few miles off of it. So I was shocked at how well it did after 100,000 miles. So that video is going to be up on State of Charge tomorrow. Absolutely. If you watch that, if you have any concerns about buying an EV, about its battery life, and you watch the range test I did, your concerns are just going to go away, because, without telling you the final results, it did amazingly well for an EV with 100,000 miles.
Awesome. So, sounds like a great time, and I don't even know what to say.
Mike, I see this comment here. Mike Sharp has a dual motor 3 with 380,000 miles. Hey, Mike, could I do a 70-mile-an-hour range test with your car? I'll fly out to where you are, wherever you are, and do that. That would be a good range test.
What's that website that tracks high mileage Teslas? I forget now. I've been on there before, and there are some crazy high mile Teslas, and they're all still fine. I mean, the graph is going down, the battery deg is down, but once you lose that all in that initial phase, it's pretty flat.
Yeah. Hey, you weren't driving anything this week new, were you, Martin?
No, absolutely no.
I've
barely been out of my house, hence working from home. And it's one of the things that's, working from home is the dream, of course, but you got to make an effort to go and, do things and book things in and get out, because otherwise you sort of four walls and working and all that kind of stuff. So no, I'd absolutely like to be cracking on with, with more stuff and looking at a bit more travel next year. So a couple of things in the US that I really want to come out to, and hey, we're going to do this show live in person at some point, haven't we? We keep saying it.
That's right.
Oh, we keep saying it.
You got to get you on this side of the pond. Well, I'd like to get out of these four walls too. And so a couple of weeks ago, I decided to go on a road trip. Well, I think I decided a few weeks before that, but I've been, playing with this idea. I just really wanted to get on the road ever since I bought my car in the first part of the year, February, March. I drove it down from Illinois. It was like a great little road trip. And it was like, I've just been itching to get back out there again. And so I did. And I went to Fort Collins, and let me just pull this up. This is kind of what I did. This is using the Tesla Fly app, which is I think you get like a free 5-day trial, and every month after that, it's like $5, and you can get all this extra data from your Tesla. And this is just like a heat map of the trip. So I went west from Tallahassee to New Orleans, then on to Austin, and up to Amarillo, and up through Trinidad into a little clipped off a bit of New Mexico, up through Trinidad, to Colorado, then all the way up to. I wanted to go on the interior mountains a bit, but there's a big stretch there. I wasn't confident that I could get there without like dropping my speed way down to like below 50 miles an hour. So yeah, I just didn't want to take the chance this trip. Maybe next time. Yeah, I wanted to, there's some nice vistas, but that road's really nice too.
There were two things against you on that stretch. One of the superchargers was down for maintenance, and B, if you had the CCS retrofit, there's plenty of chargers there, but you don't have the CCS capability yet.
Right. Yeah. And there was like no hotel to stay at with overnight charging up at like part way. And with the time that I had to, I'd spent an extra night in Austin, kind of hoping to see the Gigafactory there, the Tesla Gigafactory, and shoot some interesting video. It is not possible to shoot interesting video of the Gigafactory, I've learned. Yeah, you can drive by it and you kind of see it, and I've got video of all that stuff, and I might put it together, I guess, but it's kind of not that interesting, really. We did kind of drive up on the property, but I didn't want to drive and deal with the guards and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I don't know. What was the one, Kyle, you drove past? Was it the GM factory instead outside the fence one time? I watched that video.
Yeah, we did the same thing for the Austin Gigafactory too. We just drove right up. We were in the employee parking lot. We were watching them come off the line at the end, charging them up on the supercharger. It was pretty interesting being there. But like, we just looked like we were meant to be there. We rolled up in a Tesla. We're like, yeah, this is nothing to see here. And you just drive fast and look straight.
Right.
then you blend in.
Yeah, I've considered all that. It was just, maybe I should have, but I'm a bit, I need to be young and fearless, I guess, or something. But so 12 days, 3,800 miles. I averaged 296 watt hours per mile, which I thought, it's. Did I put that back up?
No, I did. I was watching it. Sorry, I'm curious.
Okay. 296, which is, it's really kind of weird how because I'm watching my efficiency during different times, and it just really varies, and it's really hard to tell why. Like leaving Colorado, coming down across Kansas, and actually Kansas is at a really high elevation. Like the western part of it, I had no idea. You don't really come down until you're like halfway across Kansas, so we weren't going up, and the wind was from like southwest, so there was a bit of a crosswind, but my efficiency was like 300, and I managed to get it down to 337 or 334, something like that, after like almost the whole 200 miles of charge or whatever it was. It was really hard to think. I think I was driving at the speed limit too, right at 75 miles an hour out west, as Kyle has mentioned many times. Speed limits are 75 miles an hour, which kind of is like making me think about our decision to go with a 70 mile an hour range test now, which I think is still maybe the right decision. But man, out west, everything's 75 miles an hour.
Yeah, but keep in mind, the range tests are not meant to be any bit of user related data. This is not a real world. This is what you'll experience in your car. It's just a way for us to benchmark the cars side by side. I think people drive 80 miles an hour most of the time or more. I always just set to whatever the max autopilot lets me go, and in kilometers, which is 87, allegedly. But especially out in Utah when the speed limit's 85. But the thing is, when we do our 10% challenges, we do a more user replicated 80 mile an hour speed.
And that's also regional. Depends where you live. Like here where I live, you can't drive 80 miles an hour. First of all, speed limit's 65. And people drive faster than this. The flow of traffic's above the speed limit, but it's not 80. And that's why when I did my range test with the Lyric, that I wanted to compare the 70 miles an hour to 80, I had to do it after midnight because it was the only time I could maintain 80 miles an hour on the highway without getting clogged up with cars. So it really depends where you live. Sure, out in the Midwest and where you were driving, Dom, the speed limit's higher, the roads are open, people are just blasting away. So it's hard to say we should raise it to this or we should lower it to that, because it's different across the country. So what some people say, it's got to be 80 miles an hour, that's unrealistic. The other person's saying, I can never drive 80 miles an hour. Why is he trying to tell us to do it at 80? So what Kyle said is why we do it at 70, just so it's fair to all the cars. And we know we can average 70 miles an hour almost wherever we go. So without having to stop and redo the test and everything.
Yeah, so it was a pretty interesting trip. Learned a little bit about FSD and just how the, just various things. Like some things are super annoying, some things are fine. One thing I really decided I really don't like is like if so on your screen you have your percentage of your battery health or percentage of how much of energy is in your battery, and you press that and it gives you a rated miles of how far you can go. It's just like so unrealistic. Like my car is rated for 291 miles when it's full up 100%. I'm not charged. I'm not going anywhere near that.
If you drove
On-
45 miles an hour, you would.
Right. But if I'm going like on the highway, like on a road trip,
Right.
and I'm lucky, it's like 200 miles. I don't know. It was.
Well, that's why
I'll-
Trip Planner tries to tell you arrival state of charge with reasonable estimates. But
Right.
although that can be buggy, especially in recent software, that's gotten really bad, at least on my cars. I don't know if you noticed arrival state of charge prediction getting all wonky.
Yeah, I had a few of those situations, like in Texas, which and it led me to understand that there's, especially in Texas and some places, there's still not even enough superchargers yet, because it was kind of, it was a little touch and go. I had to drive below the speed limit for like a long time. There was no alternative. You're out in the middle of nowhere because the car had said, "Oh, you're going to arrive with 18%," and all of a sudden it's looking like 3%.
And that's
Yeah,
a recent software thing that messed. It used to be better. Pete actually
Right.
complained to me off camera. He didn't talk about this on camera, actually, about how he goes, I can't rely on it anymore. It used to be rock solid,
Right.
but now it's telling me if you slow down, you'll arrive with 5% state of charge. And then he slows down, and then it says if you speed up, you'll arrive at 10% state of charge. And he's like, "What the hell's going on here? It's schizophrenic."
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a pretty big update. I think when I was where was it? I think it happened at your place. It updated, right? All the cars.
Yeah, I went to all the
Yeah.
cars, but I don't think that affected Trip Planner at all. Did you notice it being better on the way back?
No,
Okay.
actually, and
Yeah,
and
so
my
there-
problem was on the way there too. So yeah.
it's been like almost a year, because I
Okay.
remember Race to Vegas with Colton in the Model S, like it kept screwing. It showed 12% arrival, then he had to go under the speed limit to pull in at 0, and
Right.
so it was really screwing him. I think my theory is Tesla is trying to calculate wind now, which is relatively new, and they're putting too much of an emphasis on wind. And so if you have a tailwind, it's getting you to unplug earlier than you should. And maybe the tailwind dies out by the time you're 200 miles into your stretch, and then you're screwed. So yeah, this is the only thing I can think of, because their elevation calculations have been perfect since 2013 or whenever.
Yeah.
And traffic has been wonderful. It was just when they added the wind variable and really put a lot of emphasis on it. And it's sometimes optimistic, and then sometimes the opposite. Sometimes it's like, oh, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it plug in at 30%. And it's like, okay, I just do mental math now when I drive them. I always have anyway, because Trip Planner's always been erring on the side of caution for the most part. So I've always just been, okay, I'll just do it myself and pull in at 1 or 2%. But plus keeps the trip interesting, gives you something to think about, to do some math.
I guess. Yeah. So in total, I burned 938.56 kilowatt hours of electricity. Total charge time was 9 hours and 27 minutes, and that was another interesting thing. How much time you have to add to your estimate of a day. If it's like, it looks like an 8-hour day, it's like at least 10 hours, probably more.
But okay, hold on. I have your car in my app, and
Okay.
I get the notifications when you plug in for the
Right.
trip. And you were unplugging at like 95% state of charge. What were you doing? You were deep charging that thing.
I was eating. Sometimes I was, wandering through the mall. A lot of times, the car charges like before, I'm just going to let it keep charging. Why not? Because then I'll have enough to maybe change my trajectory a little bit. Yeah, but overall, my average time per charge was 19 minutes. So that's a pretty, people talk about how, I'm going to be stuck at the charger for like an hour, 19 minutes average, and those were including like some super long sessions there, like you say, we went up to 90 and some, where I just couldn't get back to the car in time for whatever reason. It was like the other end of a shopping mall for, doing stuff, eating, sitting down, eat or whatever. So yeah, it was and the cost to drive 3,800 miles. That's the best part. $374.43, which the Teslafy actually gave me a different number. I'm not sure if it's hooked into what Tesla is charging or what, but I went through my credit card statement and used that figure from there because that's what I'm actually going to pay.
Right. That also factors some free AC charging.
Right.
Yep.
Right. A couple of hotels and in your place, I think I got some AC. It's on the heat map. There's there's just like two.
But
I
how
thought
does
there was
that
a little
compare to
more.
a gas car?
I mean,
So like if you had an equivalently efficient, this is one, I actually want to do a video on this. If we have a Prius on test coming up. I'm going to take a Prius and a Model 3 and do a road trip. I think the Prius is going to be cheaper.
I think you need to use a car that has similar performance to the Model 3.
Yeah, we're using an LFP Model 3.
Right. I mean, but so is the Prius, is it the new Prius? Because that's pretty quick, actually.
Brand new.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The brand new,
I think in that market, like almost performance doesn't even really matter. LFP Model 3 isn't like spicy fast. It's just acceptable performance. I would say the same with the new Prius. And yeah.
John Check asks, how many Teslas can you put on one app? How many? You have a whole ton of them on your app.
Yeah, I don't think there's a limit. There's a limit to when you can stop scrolling left and right, and then they just give you like a product switcher tab, and then you have a list.
And Alahum asks, did I plug at 0% or not yet? Not yet, I don't think. I think I got a 2% or possibly a 1% and some 3% in there. But I don't think I got a 0 yet. No. What was it? There was a... Did I enjoy Buc-ee's? I did enjoy Buc-ee's. I stopped at least one. Yeah, it's always a good time at Buc-ee's. I got some snacks, some treats for my grandniece. I need to give her some pop candies. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, $374. I think a regular. It's going to be at least. I think it's going to be at least double for a regular car, depending on. Well, maybe not a Prius, but if your car is like 25 miles a gallon or so, I think it's going to be like half the cost. But
it'll make a cool video. Maybe we should get multiple cars. Maybe we should do like a hybrid, a gas car, a plug-in hybrid, and an electric car, and do a trip to Vegas and back or something.
Yeah, a diesel van.
A diesel van. Yeah, I got one of those right in front of my window over here.
Oh, yeah?
It costs a lot of money to run.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. That diesel van. I was thinking like Ford F or E250.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that would be similar efficiency in the Sprinter.
Right. I just that's what I drove for many years. Anyway, so Kia just held its first EV day, outlining its electric ambitions leading up to 2030. So basically, it says it aims to build 1 million EVs a year by 2026, building to 1.6 million a year by 2030. And to help in that effort, I wonder if I could take it. I'm not sure how you take that off. Stop screen. Oop, there. So to help in that effort, it's going to introduce a number of new models. And so 4 of these new models will be the EV2, EV3, EV4, EV5. EV2 is going to be a subcompact, unlikely to land on our shores. There's not really any info about that one yet, except that it's not likely to land on our shores. But we're probably quite likely to get to EV3 and EV4. Possibly even the EV5, which so far is headed like just for South Korea and more importantly China, where they're going to build it in China as well as South Korea. And it was initially revealed at the Chengdu Motor Show in August, the EV5. It seems right size for the US though, and the co-CEO Sung Song initially said that it would be exported here, but then at the EV day this week, but Kia then walked that statement back, and now they're saying it will come to North America from 2025. So it's unclear if that means the US or maybe just Canada and Mexico. But in any case, we were likely to get the EV3 and EV4, which were revealed at the event in concept form. So they're an interesting pair of cars. The EV4 looks like a smaller, sportier EV6. While the EV3 looks like an adorable pint-sized version of the 3-row EV9 that U.S. customers actually will be able to pre-order next week. We don't get any technical details on EV4 or 3 at this point, but Kia does indicate that the EV3 will start at $35,000. So Tom, there's not a whole lot of steaks to chew on here, but we know Kia has pretty good EV tech, at least coming from the Hyundai Motor Group, of course, and the eGMP platforms. So yeah, that's
So,
what.
yeah, there's, as you said, there's not a lot to chew on. It's interesting that there was miscommunication at the press event where the CEO
right.
actually said, "Oh yeah, you're getting this," and then like an hour later, they were like, "No, no, 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 no. It's going to come to North America in 2025 onward." And the interesting thing is, if they, in my opinion, if they were certain it was going to come to the U.S., they would say, "Oh, you'll be getting it in 2025 and on." But the fact that they were specifying North America, that means that they're still not sure that they're ever going to import this here. And they definitely said, part of the reason why they're unsure about this is because of the new Inflation Reduction Act tax credits. And how the foreign automakers are not happy about this. That their vehicles won't qualify for the tax credits. So we might see more of this where manufacturers just say, we're not going to even bother bringing it over there. If you're not going to give us any type of incentive, you don't get it. And that could be the result of this. And that's not necessarily different from what the lawmakers that initiated this wanted. They wanted to incentivize locally built and sourced vehicles, and it seems like that's the fruit of their work is starting to happen now, and we're going to have automakers say, yeah, we're just not going to bring it to you anymore. We're not going to give you that vehicle. We don't care if you want it or not. It's not worth it. It's not going to be competitive if we don't get any kind of incentives, and we're competing against vehicles that do. But I like the styling. I think Kia and Hyundai, we've said this on the podcast many times, Kia and Hyundai seem to be on the cutting edge of this electric vehicle transition. They seem to be all in, both brands, on becoming fully electric brands in short order. And look at this family of vehicles that they're putting out. They all seem like they're going to be really nice vehicles. And it's a shame the EV5, I think, would do really well here. It seems like it's just the right size and what the U.S. market asks for. But, it seems like that's not going to happen.
Does that look even is it like Model Y size or Kia Niro?
Yeah, probably
E-Niro
Model Y size, bigger than a Niro would be my guess. It would be like ID4, Model Y, Mach-E, right in that category.
I think I read a similar size to. Do you have the Sorrento where you are?
Yeah.
So similar size to that, right? So I don't know what
mid-size then.
What that equates to, yeah.
Yeah, mid-size, I think. Interesting. You guys have the Soul EV over there in England still, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's second generation of that. Yeah, very cool. First one had shadow mode, didn't it, on the Soul? And we still have that. Very underrated because of how practical that thing is. And great little vehicle. And what I was interested to see is I guess, can we talk about the eGMP platform and vehicle to load and all that kind of stuff, and 800-volt architecture, although it's actually a lot less.
400-volt in the EV5.
Yeah. And it's a 400-volt architecture, which is fine, but it's 27 minutes to 80%, but they gave the 30 to 80% figure, which no one ever gives unless you're trying to fudge the numbers. So I know they're like 30 to 80 in 27 minutes. Like no one gives that.
70 to 80 at this point.
Right.
So like, give me 10 to 80. I'm interested. And so, which is fine. Nothing wrong with 400-volt architecture. Nothing wrong with 350 in it. And we see it can charge very quickly. But yeah, charge speeds will be a lot lower on these to save money. And I guess I'd always just expected everything they do to come with a higher voltage platforms from here on in. Whereas they said, no, the 2, 3, 4, 5 lower voltage platforms, saving money. We'll still do vehicle to home. We'll still, you can still get the special wall box from whoever that is that they showed off with the EV9 launch that will, flick like the Ford system does. And this will come with all of that, which is all very cool. But you thought, is that a step backwards? Well, no, because it's not necessarily better to have high voltage. It's better in many ways. I was like, oh, well, if the price is if it's reasonable, if you're like, well, am I going to spend 25 grand on this combustion car or this EV? And they're able to get that price point because it's a lower, they've saved some money, no silicon carbide bits, then okay, I kind of get it. But I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah. I think we're going to see in many automakers over the course, at least the next decade, we'll have a blend of both voltages on their vehicles, depending on what suits that particular vehicle. I talked to Porsche about this extensively, but this was albeit about 2 years ago. And they said, we'll have 400 volt architecture on products in the future. We don't need to have that on all of our vehicles. Now, whether or not that comes to fruition or not, but this was Porsche's battery engineer that I was talking to. He said there'll be instances where 400 volt architecture will just work, and it'll work just fine for us, and we'll use it in that case. So it depends on the individual vehicle and the individual needs of that vehicle, and I think we'll see automakers like this have a portfolio of both 400 volt and higher voltage vehicles for the foreseeable future.
It's interesting too. The 800 volts, Kyle. Did you know about this? So I was looking at the paperwork that automakers sent to the EPA for certification, and like the EV6 on the eGMP platform, they put it at 697 volts, which is a little ways away
for the lower battery pack. The smaller battery is like mid 600 volts nominal.
Okay.
And then the big battery is a little bit more than that. And full charges up to 800, but it's still like 720 nominal for the big battery, somewhere around there.
I see it right there.
I think a lot of our viewers maybe get confused. It's not like an EV is 400 or 800. It's the 400 volt class or the 800 volt class. But then you have a weird oddball, which is the small eGMP packs that are 600 and middle 600 volt class. Like an EV can be any voltage range, and it changes based off your state of charge or regen or acceleration. It's not just a set voltage, more or less, just to clear it up for some people who don't
right
know that.
That's always changing. Voltage is always changing. It's a very squishy number, really. I was just surprised it squished that much. So, but I'm looking at so I got 697 for one, and then I've got 523 for the other.
Okay, so they could be both the small and the big battery, then just at low state of charge.
I'm just checking it out here. So I'm multiplying the voltage by the amp hours to see.
You just have to use the nominal voltage.
Right. 77.5. So they're saying this is the nominal voltage, 697, because it's a 77 kilowatt hour usable pack, right?
Yeah, that makes sense then. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, and they do it from 697 volts.
Yeah, 697 at right around mid charge sounds totally reasonable. As you go up to 100, it will of course drastically increase.
So you think 800 volts is at 100% state of charge, basically?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if eGMB even ever hits 800 volts. It might be like 780 top 100%. So I don't remember offhand. We have the charging logs somewhere, but yeah, they're low 600 dead, mid to high 700 full.
Sorry to get all nerdy like that, but voltage is one of those things that just it's hard to pin down sometimes, and you wonder why different manufacturers use different numbers sometimes. Like GM, for instance, uses a low voltage for some of its models on these EPA certification applications. Anyway, but moving along, want to talk about something else then? What are we doing? Yes. So BMW has introduced its second generation of the X2 subcompact crossover, along with a nice version. The automaker has introduced its all-electric flavor to this X2 lineup. So say hello to the iX2, but say hello, but don't get too excited, because unless you're in Europe, you're probably not going to see it. Maybe, I don't know. It sits on the FAR platform, which is a derivative of the UKL platform, which it shares with the BMW iX1. It also appears to share the powertrain with the iX1, as Martin mentioned in his EV News Daily Weekly Roundup earlier. It's got the dual motor iX2 xDrive 30, which will be the first trim level to ship in March of next year. It has 316 horsepower, 364 pound-feet of torque, and it's like a 5.6 second 0 to 62 or 100 kilometers an hour. Battery is a 64.8 kilowatt hour usable, same as the iX1. Actually, the new iX1 was just revealed, I believe, in September or something, not too long ago. Actually, they've changed it a little bit. The original one was really kind of staid, very traditional SUV shape. So it's it looks a bit nicer now. This iX2 has got a completely different kind of styling. It's definitely more like more coupe-ish in the back, as you can see. Yeah, I'm not really sure much more to say about this. This is coming to your side of the pond, Martin. Probably too small for your growing family, but what do you think its prospects are over there?
No, I like what BMW are doing with their lineup and just expanding it in all areas. So I wasn't expecting this car. If there were spy shots or whatever, it had passed me by. So very pleasantly surprised when I saw this come across my desk. Unsurprising, they're using the same as the iX1 with that 64.8 kilowatt hour battery and single motor. I don't need all-wheel drive, so single motor on the rear axle, surely. Then if they can get,
I don't think it is on the rear axle, or
Yeah,
at
no,
least
I think I haven't even seen the rear. I think I've just seen like the dual motor setups. I didn't see it.
okay.
Maybe it's coming, but
it's built on the same platform as the Countryman electric. And
Oh,
so
this
that's
one, right.
front wheel drive. But maybe
So-
they are putting it on the correct side for BMW. That would be like a knock. That would be really funny.
I really would.
Yeah.
But give me that version and give me a number that starts with 300 for WLTP range. This is going to be absolutely perfect. So
Right.
yeah,
Let's do-
love this.
unfortunately, this one's 279 WLTP with the dual motor setup. But maybe
Yeah,
with
so-
the
like I say,
49 kilometers WLTP right here. Oh,
279.
we're looking at the combustion one.
Oh, hell's bells! What have I
No,
done?
that's-
Oh, no,
that's
wait, no,
iX2.
we're not. No, we're not. I'm sorry. It says iX2.
cool.
So it
Yeah.
shows 449 kilometers WLTP maximum on aero wheels.
So yeah, I mean, give me 300 miles on a single motor version, and that is all the BMW that I need. You're absolutely right. Fantastic. Love that they're expanding. I didn't know this was the Countryman platform. So yeah, let's see how those two come around, because this looks to me, more premium and all those kind of things. But I know you're a huge Mini fan, so we can fight about that one.
I think I would take a Volvo C40 over this. It's about the same size, bigger battery, faster. Charging isn't quite as good as what BMW is saying, although I'm not 100% sure on that, because BMW, I think in their charging, the only part that I saw was charge to 80% in 29 minutes, but they didn't list the starting point.
But it's
So,
130 kilowatt peak, and it's a pretty flat-ish curve because it'll be the same as iX1.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they didn't mention the starting point. They just said charge to 80% in 29 minutes. So
Right.
we have to see what they meant by that. It would be so good if all the automakers just made a standardized, everybody give us the same 20 to 80, 10 to 80, 30, whatever it is, but just everybody throw out the same number, but they're all playing games with 30 to percent. Ford, even with the F-150, did 15 to 80%. Like, give us a set number so we can compare side by side. But I like the Volvo C40, which is like that Sportback version, very similar to this, same in size. I'd probably take that over this.
Look at that chunky steering. That's a real chunky boy, that steering wheel.
That's true. Look at that.
I mean, wow.
I think EX30 might be close to this too in size, wouldn't it be?
No, the EX30 is going to be smaller than this.
Even
Yeah.
smaller? Okay.
Yeah, the EX30 is pretty small. That might be like
Right.
the iX1, right?
But I feel like this is small too. Like it's the same wheelbase as the iX1.
It'll be
Right.
smaller than the iX1. It's the coupified iX1.
Right. Right. So the mystery to me on this vehicle is, why is it so heavy? It's like 4,617 pounds. That's like more than a Model Y. And it's definitely smaller than a Model Y. Is like the heaviest Model Y is like 4,500
way smaller than
pounds.
Y, I think.
Yeah, so it's like 100 pounds more than or not quite 100 pounds more than the heaviest Model Y. But is that, and it's just not because I've got the battery is it air cooled? I saw something that was. No, it's not. Look, Martin's giving me the funny face. The iX1 originally had an air cooled battery, did not?
I
Not in the current generation, no.
Okay.
Because that would be a huge surprise
There's
for
no
them to take away battery condition. No, everyone's moving towards preconditioning.
Yeah, and the Mini has all the active thermal management, so it's not like they'd put it in the Mini and not the BMW. It's got to be the same system.
I never heard.
I saw that on a site last night. I would put it in my write up because they couldn't verify it anywhere with BMW. So
yeah,
I wanted to just bring that because for some reason though. In my mind, I'm thinking like the iX1 was that way. I don't know why. There's something about the iX1 that really bugged me. And I think it wasn't just the styling. I thought it was something else.
Oh, I think it looks good. They're all over Munich now. People love them. They charge pretty well. The Sixt bought like a buttload of them. So now when you go get a rental car out of the Munich airport, iX1's like the default choice. And yeah, I think everyone seems to be, they're okay. I mean, not a huge charging peak, but a pretty good curve. So yeah, I don't think there's any major issues with them. All the reviewers I know seem to really like it.
Here's
Okay.
a YouTube channel called Swede365, and he's made a short video of how he preconditions his iX1. Looks pretty easy on the screen there. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah. Okay. I guess let's move on then. I don't know.
yeah, perfect.
All right. So Mercedes-Benz Trucks has just celebrated the world premiere of a new battery electric long haul truck. It calls the eActros 600. So if you look at his name, 600, it offers 621 kilowatt hours of battery. It's actually 3 packs of 207 kilowatt hours, and they're LFP, which is kind of interesting too, I think. It's engineered to keep 80% or more of capacity in that battery after 1.2 million kilometers or 10 years. So that's 745,645 miles. It's a lot of miles to keep up to 80% or more. So that's interesting, especially with the LFP chemistry. It's got 800-volt electric axle with 2 motors and a 4-speed transmission, which is also kind of interesting approach, specifically for use in heavy-duty long-haul transport. Electric motors generate a continuous output of 400 kilowatts, as well as a peak output of 600 kilowatts. Range is said to be 500 kilometers, which is 311 miles. So with its ability to charge pretty quickly, they say that it can travel significantly more than 1,000 kilometers a day or 620 miles. CCS charging goes up to 400 kilowatts, but the truck will eventually be able to, they'll also enable megawatt charging on this. 20 to 80%, they say, in about 30 minutes at a suitable charging station with an output of around 1 megawatt. So once they have the megawatt charging, adapted in there, they can do it in just under 30 minutes, which is great. It's got 5 levels of regen, including a one pedal drive mode, which is, kind of interesting to see in a big truck. Let's see, I'm not sure. Production is planned for the end of 2024. They say the truck can be more profitable than a diesel long-haul truck within the average vehicle holding period of about 5 years or after 600,000 kilometers, despite a purchase price, they say, that is around 2 to 2.5 times higher than the diesel equivalent.
That's got to be the key, hasn't it? Actually, that's the whole point of this vehicle, is that a fleet manager looks at the number in the bottom right-hand side of the spreadsheet and says, oh, I'm going to run this for 1.2 million kilometers or miles or whatever. And after 600,000 of those, everything is money in the bank. So yeah, bigger purchase price, but on the average price, so, you know what diesel price is going to be in the future, or electricity price. But surely the point of this vehicle is that they made a big point at the launch of it to say it's going to be cheaper after 5 years of ownership, and you're going to run this for 1.2 million, whatever, then it's money in the bank. And they don't care what. It's nice to have the Mercedes badge. It looks sweet. It's a nice vehicle, but they don't care. Ultimately, if it makes them more money, they'll buy this if the use case suits it. So we have a lot of rules over here on how, not only fast you can drive, but how long you can drive for before you have to stop. And that's all recorded. And how long the drivers are allowed behind the wheel and not behind the wheel, etc. And so with that, we, charging makes more sense for us. So particularly megawatt charging, infrastructure is a problem. What I thought was interesting with this, it was that they're shipping the truck with everything apart from the connector on the side, because the megawatt charging standard is not ratified.
Right.
So that's crazy. Like, come on, Sharon, what are you doing? I know, it must be fabulously difficult what you're doing. But
Right.
Another company being like, we're just going to ship the vehicle, and when it gets ratified, bring them all back, and we'll put the MCS stuff on the side. For now, it's got CCS on 1 or 2 sides, I think you said. That seems crazy.
Yeah, and it already goes in production at the end of 2024 too. So I guess they don't have confidence that the MCS will be figured out by then.
You think Tesla would do that? Absolutely not.
Man.
So, hey, Daimler, very different company. So
True. So, Kyle, were you surprised that they went with LFP batteries?
No, it makes a lot of sense for this use case. Long lasting, full charge them, beat the crap out of the battery, doesn't matter. That's the way it should be.
But they're heavier, though. It could impede on the load carrying ability, right?
Yeah, certainly. That's a really interesting point. Max load carrying is interesting. However, I've learned in Europe, especially in like Nordic countries, you can carry way more weight than we can in the US.
Right.
Which I would not expect. So yeah, because I've always been curious, like why those Scania trucks have like crazy, V12s with 800 horsepower and 5 million pound-feet of torque. And I was talking to a truck driver up there, and he's like, "Oh, I'm running the equivalent of like 120,000 pounds." I'm like, "Dang, we can only go up to like 80 or 82 if it's electric." So yeah, pretty interesting. But no question, the Semi smokes this in every possible category. The Tesla Semi.
Right.
So like what is Mercedes doing? Other than like obviously they have a flat faced cab, which can't be good for aero.
Right.
Even though they had whenever they put pictures of something in like an aerodynamic wind tunnel, that's clearly not aerodynamic. It's just because they know someone's going to ask about it. They're like, look at the wind blowing around this thing. But no, there's no way that this is a good shape for a battery electric vehicle. And is it illegal to drive a Semi, like a Tesla Semi shape in Europe? I thought that was approved, and part of the design process for the Tesla Semi was to run it on the Euro roads.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because all of our trucks look like this. We don't have what I call like the convoy. We haven't got the Chris Christopherson look truck of 10-4 rubber ducky. So like
I love your references. Is this how you really think about America?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're all doing that, right?
Uh-huh,
you're all just racing the cops across the country and fighting all the time. Like everything's a 1978 movie in my head for Americana. So,
I didn't know you were on my road trip, Martin.
That's exactly what Dom was in bar fights and chasing away from the police. This is what happens, right? So yeah, we don't have that style of truck. This is a kind of a Euro style truck. So you're right, it smokes it in every possible way, all the way down to we can't put the connector on the side and
sounds like price too.
Yeah, it's
because
2.5
Tesla
times.
Semi says it costs roughly the same as a diesel truck.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Isn't that what they said in the Jay Leno interview?
I didn't hear that part.
Yeah,
I know it's not 2.5 times the price of a diesel truck.
No, it wasn't anything like that. It was like maybe just a bit more, but after 2 years, it was like a really quick, break even point.
Right. And the break even here, it was like, I think it was break even for the eActros is, I think they said 4 years in the thing.
Well, it was the kilometers that seemed huge because there's going to be a lot of regional trucking that may want this thing, but it's not actually going because they're not putting as many miles on it in short haul application. So
here,
anyway,
I just threw this up. This is what Volvo has been doing. This is the Volvo Super Truck 2. It's not electric though, but you can tell they did a lot of work on streamlining. So this is all like one flowing shape all the way down along the side. So I just saw that. I was excited at first. I thought it was electric because they did all this aero work, but then I don't know what Volvo is doing either. Volvo trucks is different from the Volvo regular company. You need, to have an electric, and they have the VNRs, right? They have some semis, but
they have them both in Europe and the US. Both Volvo electrics. They've gone pretty heavy into EV. Something I'd really love to cover. So, covering trucks, count me in. I want to do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love all the trucks.
We didn't talk a lot about that Leno video. One of the most amazing things for me was when he drove the semi-truck around and then they stopped and hooked up the trailer and pulled away. And he's like, have I got it? And they said, yeah, we designed the whole truck so that it fit because electric motors are so different to combustion. We've designed it so that it feels the same. So yeah, we can just change the torque so that he's like, are we hooked up? It's like, absolutely. So it feels, when I watched that, it gave me a whole new respect for the team that's working on the semi-truck, which is obviously in the shadows of 3Y, Plaid, Cybertruck, obviously. And I think they've been quietly getting on and making something absolutely incredible that we don't talk about very much.
We don't know until we can play around with it. I really got to find a way to go do a charge test on that thing. And what's interesting is Tesla, with this whole MCS conversation, they're just using a previous version of megawatt charging standard, which is, all Charin as well. It's just like they're not ready, so they just put the old port on there and sent it.
Get it out. Yeah.
And I did look it up. Tesla does say 2-year payback period.
Wow.
Okay,
That's
sweet.
what they're predicting.
That's insane. That's brilliant.
So the Tesla Semi has what, 4? Is it 3 or 4 motors? They did have Model 3 motors originally. Now it has.
So it's got 2
what was
drive unit assemblies. Excuse me, but then I believe they both are plaid drive units, more or less. So
Okay,
there might be one single motor and then a plaid unit.
Right.
So it's 3 motor.
That's what it is. I'm pretty sure, because I remember one disconnects sometimes.
Right. So they have like their drive motor for cruising on the highway, which is like the efficiency tuned motor. And because they're both permanent magnet, they have another one, which I believe the plaid carbon wrapped one is the really strong one.
Right.
And that's the one that's geared really short to get you up a ramp or for big acceleration. That decouples under light load. But when you're coming to a stop, they are working both tandemly all the time.
Wow. So that's a very interesting way of doing that. Whereas Daimler or Mercedes-Benz has used 2 electric motors, maybe the same, and have a 4-speed transmission to kind of get that same sort of effect, rather than using just staggering the motor out, the motor efficiency.
Well, they might still have different gear ratios for each motor in the Mercedes thing. And on top of that, also transmission. I think in general, like European trucking is, I don't want to say more hardcore than the US, but my impression is loads are heavier. The abuse on trucks might be more, even though you're cruising at lower speed. But there's like more construction work, more like weird things they have to do. And I just, for some reason, the diesel trucks in Europe make way more power than the US trucks. So I imagine somewhere there's got to be a regulation or a use case that's more aggressive than what we do just sitting on the highway the whole time. Of course, trucks really struggle here in Colorado, going up I-70. You'll see them sometimes going 10 miles an hour up the hill with flashers on. So they may have more regulations in Europe that say you have to maintain a certain speed on a certain grade, which we don't necessarily have here.
Right. Okay. So let's move on. I wanted to mention real quickly that the new entry-level Genesis, the GV60, is now a rear-wheel drive version of that car, and it starts now at $53,195. So we were talking this week, and this episode will come up on Monday. We did a special episode, batteries included, to solve your electric car buying quandary or conundrum. And we were talking about different cars and in this price range in one of those discussions. And we didn't talk about Genesis because it was, above that person's budget. But now it's below, it's 53. So
but you can't buy them in every state. Only 18 states, 20 states, something
22,
like that.
I think, right now.
Yeah,
they just raised a couple more were added just like in the past week or so or something.
Honestly, just get a used GV60 Performance.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think they have just tanked in value.
Really?
Yeah.
A bit
Genesis,
of a range hit, but
GV60. Yeah, but performance. Hold on, let's look. Lowest price GV60s, 60 grand. Oh, I'm just looking within 30 miles. This is what we do on the car buying advice situation.
Yeah.
So you can get a GV60 Performance with 48,000 miles, with 6,000 miles on it for $48,000. Another one, $50,000 for 3,000 miles on a GV60 Advanced all-wheel drive. The Performance, again, $50,000.
that's basically a new car.
944 miles on that one. Here's one, 20,000 miles, one owner, no accident, not a buyback, $51,000. That could be even my mom's old car. I don't know. Yeah.
Right on. Don't forget the superfan question. What was the superfan question? Actually, we got a superfan question.
Found a 2019 e-tron Prestige for $34,000 with 46,000 miles. Should I get it? It's the only one around us. Actually, seems a little bit expensive for the mileage. We've done some recent comparisons on e-tron, and actually a friend of mine, also another YouTuber, called me last night talking about buying an e-tron. This is the car to buy. I don't think this is the example to go for. The country is your market. Plane tickets one way are cheap. Go there, do a pre-purchase inspection on the car. They're still relatively new, where there's not much to worry about. Make sure, if you want, buy it from an Audi dealer. That's fine. They're still cheap there. And drive it back and make a road trip out of it. The whole country is your market.
The price isn't too high. The mileage is, though. We found a lot of them right around 30, 32, somewhere in that area with like 15, 20,000 miles. So,
yes.
That's what bothers me a little bit about that. The number wouldn't be bad if everything was the same and it had, 12,000 miles, 18,000 miles. Then I would say, look at this one pretty hard, but there's a lot of them out there with a lot less miles. So you might want to check around.
You should be able to get into it with that price, $34,000. There should be still like a whiff of that new car smell when you open the doors.
And that's important. You've got to get the right car that makes you feel great when
it makes you feel good, right?
Well, you also get fragrances in the e-tron, so you could just make it smell new.
What?
Oh, yeah. You didn't know that, Martin?
No.
Yeah, you can choose. They come preloaded with 2 fragrances. Alyssa hates it, but I just mess with her and I put it on full blast every time. And you can choose summer or winter is what the factory one. So now you can learn what summer smells like, and you can learn what winter smells like, and it smells like perfume. It's pretty crazy.
That's a reason to buy the thing on its own.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's pretty cool actually.
Hey, Kyle, I understand that you wanted to talk GLE plug-in electric hybrid.
We haven't discussed it on the show yet, I don't think.
We haven't. And you had one on loan, and it charges quickly, right?
Well, yeah, and you were in it as well, so I'd like to hear some of your thoughts, as well with it. But basically, it's we had a brand new plug-in hybrid from Mercedes, which typically we wouldn't spend too much time on it, but it actually is like a good EV because you can keep it in electric mode pretty easily. Huge thanks to John for the super chat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, John. But essentially, you can put the charger in the ground. What am I trying to say? I'm talking about GLE, and I'm reading his comment at the same time. Talking about a mind.
Put the GLE in the ground, man.
I was going to say, you can put your foot to the floor, and I'm like, you can put the charger in the ground. Still early in the morning here. You can, in the GLE, lock it in electric mode and drive it full EV all the time. It did almost 70 miles fully electric, which is more than an old i3 or more than my Leaf. And that was just driving around town at 70 miles an hour. It did almost 60 miles fully electric. So that's
amazing.
Pretty good.
It's a big SUV.
Yeah, it's a huge, super
it's
build,
full size. I don't know what you.
It's not quite full size, but mid size. But yeah, it's they have the GLS, which is way bigger.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So GLE, everyone knows it. Built in Alabama, American built car, and only has a 23.3 kilowatt hour usable battery, but charges from 0 to 100% in 30 minutes.
So what's the
on a
gross
DC charger?
battery? What's the buffer?
Don't know. Got to be huge.
It's got to be a big buffer.
Got to be big. But they let you set a charge limit in it, so you can charge it to 50 to 100% on a charger. It's like a full EV and then a full gas car. It's cool.
And it's got the electric motor ahead of the transmission in the driveline, right?
Yeah, all the Germans do it this way, and it's a little bit frustrating from a smoothness standpoint,
right?
Because you can feel it shift, and you get almost one pedal driving with it. It does a lot of regen, but off throttle. But as it downshifts, you get a little lurch. The car gives up the regen for a second as it downshifts, and it's just not so smooth. The benefit is highway range is awesome. Again, 57, 58 miles. The video's on out of spec, something like that. And it just kept going. But I was more impressed with the charging performance. 62 kilowatt peak and holds full power all the way to 80%. At 81%, it starts walking down. And at 99%, still doing 33 kilowatts. So there's got to be a big buffer up there. But it's awesome.
I think I feel fine about plug-in hybrids having a CCS plug when they charge that quickly. So
yeah,
I think that's far. Okay.
I went into it because I have the Polestar 1, which is one of the few plug-in hybrids with CCS charging. And I, of course, never use CCS chargers with it. I've only done it one time out of convenience, other than when we did the Cannonball with it. it's just like kind of not necessary in our car because it doesn't even charge that great. We get 57 kilowatt peak, but it has a terrible curve and it's stepped down. The Mercedes is like actually useful where if you're on a road trip where many gas stations now have charging stations next to the fueling stations, you can go full up the tank fuel. You have to stand there, babysit the car. Just pull it around to the charging station, plug it in, go get snacks, get lunch, do whatever. And now you got a full charge and a full tank. Now, I still think there's some etiquette here. If you're driving one of these cars, don't go to a fast charger if there's a line, if there's a lot of people, leave it for the battery electric cars. I think that's fair etiquette, but it's not like illegal. Like you can still plug it in. And as long as you're getting energy, then do what you want with it, I guess, in theory.
I mean, for the amount of range you have, I don't really have a problem with this thing at the DC fast charging place. For the amount of time it takes to charge, I think it's a pretty good.
Yeah, it was
fine.
Especially if you're pulling 50 kilowatts, like
right.
You know,
60, 62.
60, if you're pulling 60 kilowatts, I mean, I don't have a problem with people charging on this. I really don't. They're not going to be charging that long. It's not like they're going to be there for an hour. How long would you even need at that charge rate with this, Kyle? How long would it take you to, let's say you pulled in at 10%?
Yeah, but I think you're actually going to see people pulling at 0% often in these because you'll have that gas engine
exactly
to get you there.
You're
so you're
right.
pulling at 0 and you charge to 80, 85%, takes 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and you're out.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that at all, personally.
It's when you don't need to charge the plug-in
it never
hybrid
needs to.
That's the problem. And a plug-in hybrid owner thinking like, oh, my car can charge, so I'll plug in because I've got a right to be here. And they have. And I should say they absolutely have got a right to charge. If you got a CCS plug on the side of it, a socket, you can absolutely do whatever you want. You can choose to help your fellow EV drivers who haven't got a petrol engine in the thing, who need to get somewhere. But you can be whatever person you want to be. That's my fear with this, is someone thinks, oh, I'll plug it in because it's my company car on my business card, or my business pays my mileage, or they clear my credit card and my charging, and I'm going to go and do some shopping. I'll plug it in. I'll come back and be 100% or something. So that's the downside. I think if you're responsible, but I say responsible, that comes with a bunch of loaded kind of...
We're talking about Mercedes owners here.
Moral
These are the worst of the worst.
Moral obligations. And it's like, you can be whatever person you want, but I'd prefer you didn't plug the thing in if there's a queue. But they'll do what they do. So that's the downside. But it charges quickly. And it looks like... Did it feel luxurious? Did it feel like a nice premium vehicle?
Yeah, of course. It's tuned really nice. Everything, its suspension-wise was great. The real downside had to do with the combustion engine. So many new plug-in hybrid electric SUVs are like BMW X5, Cayenne, Land Rovers plug-in hybrids with CCS fast charging now. They're all using the inline 6 engines, or in the Porsche's case, the V6. This uses the 4-cylinder engine that sounds like a tractor, and it's really kind of lame. So not into it when the combustion engine kicks on, but I love the way it drove. I've been a fan of GLE. I like this platform. I think it's great. And talking to some of the Mercedes dealers who were commenting on the video, sounds like they're having so much interest in this car. They're really excited to sell this thing.
There was a lot of stuff going on with that powertrain, so I can see where engineers would be geeking out. But we should hit we got to go pretty in a couple minutes, but I just wanted to hit a couple, got to get going. Yeah. Couple of things really quick. You can now get a Model 3, Model Y with a wrap from the factory for a good bit of money. But Kyle, you did a good podcast on this with Francie and another
Brandon Tesla Flex. Yep.
Right. Tesla Flex, Brandon. Right. And it's great to go into detail of why it's that price. And it's definitely check that out.
It's no. Oh, by the way, someone I just have to point in, disappointed there was no bounce and charge testing. The GLE I had doesn't bounce, and actually GLEs don't bounce anymore. Only GLS Maybach gets it. I think it was just a really expensive suspension system. Back to the Tesla wrapping point, though, Dom, you're totally right. It's actually not a bad value when you factor in it's not just a color change wrap; it's a color change PPF, and they wrap the door sills. I mean, it's a
Right.
really high quality material, and they're doing the edges and the door sills. Now we have to wait till we see one that they do, and if there's enough attention to detail and all of those things. But if you were to bring it to any wrap shop in the equivalent area, they would charge you the same, if not more, for this service. So I think it's not cheap, but it's not unreasonable compared to when I first saw the number. I'm like, $8,000 for a wrap. Like, what are you
Right.
doing? But it's a totally different material and extra places that they get into the door jams with.
Right. It's still kind of interesting to me that they're not painting cars in these colors. They think it's more efficient, I guess, or cheaper,
Well,
make more
it's a lot cheaper.
profitable.
It's a lot cheaper to make a small profit margin on wrapping someone's car than a new paint shop. Because look at the new paint shop in Berlin. That was a
Right.
Japanese paint shop they bought in. I think that was a Japanese company that supplied the paint shop. That it was like the best of the best that the automotive sector go and get. And
Right.
what have they done? 2 new colors out of that. So,
Right.
and Tesla always like we're premium vehicle. Well, you're up against a lot of premium. You're now at the point where you're attracting buyers who perhaps aren't the early adopters, who perhaps are used to going to a car company that go, "Oh, would you like 400 colors, sir?" So, or some companies going, "What color would you like? You bring it to us." So,
Sure.
I think all dealerships are going to offer wraps. All auto manufacturers are going to offer wraps as add-ons. 100%. They all should be already. And dealers are talking a lot about electric cars and how they're going to lose money for servicing them, and they need a new business model. Here's part of your business model: sell wraps. Why let a third-party shop take $4,000 or $5,000, $8,000 to wrap it and PPF it? Everyone should be on board with this. You should be able to get your vehicle wrapped and PPF at every single dealership that of every make. Right now, the dealers are throwing money out. They're leaving money on the table.
Mm-hmm. And Anthony Rinaldi makes a good point. Paint shops are expensive, and sometimes they're not that great. I mean, painting a car takes a certain level of craftsmanship, I think, to do a good job, to avoid all like the orange peel, all the little pitfalls that come with painting a car after, right? So,
well, any paint shop will have orange peel. So any factory paint does, even Rolls-Royce or anything crazy, they just paint extra thick and then do a polish afterwards to knock down the orange peel. But that's Colton's the expert on this topic, but there's really no way to get rid of orange peel on any normal car unless you really want to significantly reduce the thickness of your surface.
Let me grab one of these comments that Real EV's been posting this a couple of times. Please take them up on their offer. If you remember, few years ago, back in 2019, I went down, I interviewed Giovanni Palazzo from Electrify America. We talked about network problems, and he said, we're going to invite you back down here in 6 months to talk about what we've done and how we've improved it. And I put that in my article, and Real EV's calling me out on it here. Now, if you remember, that interview was, I think, in January of 2020 or December of 2019. We had it all scheduled for that summer. We were talking about dates and weeks that I could go down. COVID hit. Right. And that pushed it off. No one was allowed to even visit their facility for like 2 years. They didn't start inviting people back to Electrify America till like 2021, the end of 2021 or something like that. So I reached out to them multiple times, and then there's the change. Giovanni is no longer the CEO of Electrify America. Rob is now, which we have a good relationship. I've reached out to them multiple times, and they've kept saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to get this scheduled. We're going to have you back down here," but it never materialized. And I just stopped bothering them about it because I'm not going to waste my time. They know where I am. They know what I'd like to discuss. And if they're not going to reach out and say, "Look, we'd like you to talk about this on your channel," then no, I'm not going to continue to ask them because it just seems like they don't want to talk to me about it. So that's your answer.
Right. Yeah, we are. We're not sure about criticizing them. I'm not sure if they take that. Hopefully, they don't take that personally, but I don't know. We'll see. Oh, I want to show off this. I stopped in Euphoria, Alabama, to eat at this place. I don't know if you can see this.
What are we getting ourselves into here?
I thought, where's this going?
Yeah.
It's just a neat building. It's like it was described to me as like the font across the top, streamliner, modern. It used to be a car dealership, and they've kept the name of the place. It's kind of weird.
What's it called? Mitchell.
Central Service. grill, Mitchell's Central Service Grill. And it had the best menu for like 20, 30 miles in the area. So I was like, well, I'm going to try some crawfish tails. That looks good. And they were. Yeah. Yeah, it was just a neat little place. And out in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, basically. And they're 30 miles from a Walmart, which I don't know how you get 30 miles from a Walmart in America, but they've managed to do it. And
Nice. So we should do an EV road trip to Mitchell's.
We
Yeah.
should do our first live podcast from Mitchell's Central Service Grill.
Let's not.
It's a really great. I mean, if nothing else, the food will be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the people actually were very
Looks
lovely there.
great.
Yeah. So I guess that brings us to the end of our show. If you have any questions or comments, please leave us a comment below or get in touch with us on Twitter, where we are Batteries Inc. Pod, or on Threads, where we are Batteries Included Podcast. You can follow Martin on Twitter or Threads at EV News Daily. On Twitter, Tom is at Tomolog. That's with 2 M's, and Tom Malogny on Threads. I'm Domenick Yoni on Threads and in real life. Kyle it's Kyle Connor on Twitter and goes by Virtual Kyle on Threads when he's there. And when he's not there. Don't forget, if you like the show, please give us a thumbs up, click subscribe, tap that bell icon for notifications. Thank you all again for joining us. It's been great. And we'll see you again next time. Ciao.